Do you have any idea what their defense is going to be, given the fact that the judge has basically taken away their defense?
Am I the only person in the world talking about attacking the timeline, attacking the timeline, attacking the timeline, attacking the timeline?
Do you have any idea what their defense is going to be, given the fact that the judge has basically taken away their defense?
Taken away their defense.
You're like, am I in crazy? 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 Like, am I in crazy?
Challenge the timeline of the murders.
Talking about attacking the timeline.
What's the strategy today? Winning.
Whose motherfucking hair is that?
What's the strategy today? Winning.
The consensus has been challenge the timeline of the murders. Challenge the timeline of the murders.
Hello, welcome. Good afternoon. Happy Thursday. It is lunchtime. It is daytime. The sun is out. Sky is blue. It's beautiful. And so are you. What's going on, y'all? I wanted to do a lunchtime live because I'm done working for the day. What do you think about that? And I have things I want to talk about from Bob and Allie's interview with Andy yesterday. So we unpacked it a little bit last night. I did go and private that live after we finished, and I had a bunch of friends, y'all, express concern and ask what happened. Nothing happened. There was a portion of that live that made me uncomfortable. And if anybody was on the live with us, it was just, it just made me feel a little uncomfortable talking about Jerry Holman and some of the things that, you know, personally I've been through and experienced with Jerry Holman. And it just felt like the kind of thing that I didn't want on that live, because I thought that it was a really important topic that we were covering, and we had a great panel, and DB and I unpacked some really good stuff. And even the end, when I went on my soliloquy, I watched it back. It was, I liked our conversation last night. And so I don't want to get rid of it, but I am going to clip out a little part in the middle, because I feel like it takes away from, it just didn't feel necessary, if that makes sense. Nothing major, like no big deal, but I will put it back up, because it was a lot of fun and it was a good conversation. It was kind of like our initial immediate processing session, if that makes sense, after the interview yesterday. So yeah, but I have more notes, y'all. I've been taking notes. Hey, Steve, thank you so much for the super chat. Angel is not devil's favorite. Daily support for my friend. DB said, no, it was not DB's fault. DB didn't do anything. DB was a great mediator and helper, so it's fine. A helper. Hey, hippie chick. Yes, it will be back. I promise. And I could have done it before this, but then I ran out of time, and I'd much rather talk to y'all this afternoon about the interview. So without further ado, we're going to rewatch a couple of my favorite parts of the interview with Defense Diaries and Rick Allen's defense attorney, Andy Baldwin. I have been thinking about that 4-hour conversation they had with Andy since we got off last night, and it was great. So without further ado, doing a decompress in Krebin is necessary. Maintaining the equilibrium of Krebin is foremost. Andy was awesome. I'm going to try really hard, and I always say this, I am going to try really hard not to focus on the chat just while I go through this, because I get a little distracted. I don't know if y'all knew that. So the first thing I want to talk about from the live yesterday. Hey, Steve. Yeah, we're still going to talk later after Brad. Some people say that, it's excessive. I don't know. I figure this is kind of a critical time in the case of the state of Indiana versus Richard Allen and his appeal, his appellate journey. So if I have the time, I'm going to spend it here talking about the criminal case against Richard Allen. Such a restraint, such a restraint. All right. So I timestamped so that we can kind of like go through and just kind of focus on the parts that I want to talk about. So the first thing that I wanted to revisit is when Andy is talking about his experience after getting kind of booted, I think is the word that he used, booted off the case after Judge Gull had her sua sponte on her own motion, secret in chambers ambush hearing. I'm sure most everybody knows what that refers to. So Andy was talking about that and what that was like for him. And it was the first time that we got to kind of hear him talk about his relationship with his co-counsel, Brad Rosie, who we will hear from this evening. So I'm going to replay this clip and then we're going to.
October 31st right now, because
you can play.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
So after we had been booted off the case, if you want to call it that, Brad Rosie, I did not want to get back on the case. I was so upset about everything that had happened. I thought my career was over. I thought, Jerry Holman had won because he had, gone out and conducted this ridiculous investigation that he had no business. He had a conflict of interest because I had been going after him during this trial and he wanted me off the case. There's no question about it. And we'll get back to that, how he wanted me arrested and charged with a crime. And he went down to Johnson County and did. I want to talk about that because that's real third world banana republic kind of stuff. Okay. And we'll talk about that later. But on October 31st, prior to that, I was down in Florida. A buddy of mine has a place down there, and he called me up when I was at my lowest and said, go down to Longboat Key and spend some time. And Brad called me up, and how Brad and I connected and stuff is a kind of an interesting story in and of itself. But now we're 10 months in to our relationship as partners on this case. And Brad called me and said, what are we going to do? And I said, I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm not getting back on this case. I can't do it. It's not going to help Rick out. I don't have the emotional energy to do that. And Brad was like, are you going to let them get away with this? Is that what you're going to do, Andy? I've known you not very long, but I know this is not how you operate. You're not going to let this happen. You're not going to look in the mirror, are you? And be okay with not fighting back and trying to get back on the case. And then he called me a couple of words that maybe only really good friends can call each other about, my reluctance. And then I said, yeah, okay, let's do it. And then Kara Weineke and Mark Lehman and oh my gosh, I mean, I can't even think of everybody that was involved in that. All these great.
That was notable to me for a couple of reasons, primarily because when Judge Gull held that ambush hearing and the defense got essentially accused of being grossly incompetent and grossly negligent, and Judge Gull could not and would not allow them to represent Rick Allen, threw him off the case. And I remember thinking, like, I wonder what this means. Like, can Brad stay on without Andy? Can either of them come back? Can they both come back? I remember Brad had never withdrew his appearance officially. And it was just really cool to hear that at no time during that whole experience that essentially transpired because of Andy was a victim, according to the state of Indiana, of conversion, i.e. Mitch Westerman allegedly apparently took pictures of some discovery and crime scene photos. They were sent to one person who sent to another person. Leak happened. The least leaky leak of all time. But it was significant, and that occurred on Andy's watch, right? In Andy's office where the discovery, the war room was. So while they're a team, they're co-counsel, Brad was not directly involved in that situation, right? It didn't happen in his office. And I just remember thinking like, damn, that's probably really shitty for both of them. I hope, you know, we didn't really ever get to hear how that went down, and having kind of an inside perspective now that at no time did Brad throw him under the bus. At no time did he want to continue without Andy. And in fact, Andy, I had no idea that Andy at any time wanted to, like, I mean, I can understand being super browbeaten and not wanting to come back, but it was really Brad that kind of like encouraged him and essentially did a bully unto him, rightfully so, and lovingly, it sounds like. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. And he's interviewed with me. Hi, Ems. It's a daytime live, which means Ems is here. And I love you, and I'm happy you're here. I'm so relieved they're good friends. They deserve to get a new bestie from this process. Their personalities seem so different, and I feel like it's very complementary. They're very yin and yang, and I think that's, you know, we all need a Brad and we all need an Andy. So anyway, I just want to play that part because it was like sweet, you know. There's so much darkness and awful stuff in this case. It's just nice to hear something nice. So anyway. Next up, this is, I think, just kind of a continuation of that a little bit.
So yeah, that was an unbelievable day. But all right, so I'm gonna work our way back, and then we're
sorry.
No, that's fine. But before we move on, did her doing that at that, going back to October 31st, did that sort of give you more like wind in your sail to fight, or did it suck it away? Like, how did you feel coming out of it?
I think it bowed me up quite a bit. I remember walking out of the courthouse, and I was super steamed about, you know, what was going on, and I didn't understand, and still don't understand to this day, where the investigative journalists are on this case. I just don't understand it. You know, what I see a lot of is reporting of what happened or what they see with their own eyes. They might offer opinions on, you know, filings and so forth, but nobody's digging into this case, even to this very day, about all this area. And it's like, I don't get it. I mean, you know, I just don't get it. So I was bowed up. That's the day that I walked downstairs and I saw these reporters and they wanted to ask me questions. I'm like, would you go do your jobs? Would somebody go out there and please do some reporting here? Be some journalists, be actual, not just reporting what you see, but actually doing what, you know, Woodward and Bernstein did. And these guys back in the old days, they actually dug in and started interviewing people and looking at the documents. I mean, the Franks memo was, all these people are saying that's defense crazy theories and all that. Did they ever read it? I'm going to say no. Because if they read it, then they would know that everything is backed up with the documentation, the videos, photographs, deposition work, whatever it was. And there's a pretty good roadmap for journalists to start, names of people that they can go try to interview.
And we all know that famous clip of Andy, famous to all of us cranks, Andy walking out of the courtroom. I believe it was the 31st. It was not the day that they got booted off originally. Originally, it was the day that they came back after having filed their pro bono appearance, private appearance for Rick and Gull. Still, you know, I cannot let these men represent you, whatever. So as Andy was leaving, rightfully so, he was pretty jazzed up. But journalism, y'all. Go do a journalism. Mavhawk said, where are you? Where is my friend? Go do a journalism, I believe is the exact quote. I guess my only thing I want to say there is, like, now that they are dipping their toe into the unofficial maybe content or YouTube or podcast world, hopefully they will start to recognize that the journalists have been talking about this. I think everyone here would fall into that independent reporter journalist category. Did you see my FBI FOIA return? No, hi Lana. Everyone go subscribe to Lana's channel, Truth and Transparency. I have not seen it yet, Lana. I'm so behind on everything. Anyway, journalists, here we are. And we're going to keep doing a journalism. And also, Steve, by the way, thank you, Steve, for sharing. But Kyla, I believe her name is, she is one of the Indiana local reporters that covered the trial. And I liked her coverage a lot. I thought it was good. Kyla Russell will be interviewing Richard Allen's defense team, Andrew Baldwin and Jennifer Auger, to chat about the historic trial. She posted that today at noon. So I guess tomorrow on Wish TV, Kyla Russell is going to be interviewing Andy and Jen, or, you know, whenever that interview happened, they're going to be airing that. So that's cool. Some mainstream, mainstream media getting on what's it called? No, I agree with this, but we have to adapt and change with the times. Adapt or die. Anyway, next time, Sam. I'm not going to go through the whole interview, obviously, but maybe I will.
The point of it is, but for that getting resolved, I would never ever have been on the case, because what happened is I got a phone call from a guy named Brad Rosie, and I didn't know Brad. He's from, for those that don't know, I mean, I'm down here in, south of Indianapolis, and Brad's way up here in Logansport near Delphi. And Brad was kind of the go-to. I mean, he'll tell you about this tomorrow, but he was kind of the go-to. He's not a public defender necessarily, but he's a very good lawyer, obviously. And he was kind of the go-to guy when there was complicated cases or high-profile cases that they needed really a more of a tactician and a more of an experienced lawyer that knows what they're doing. And so Brad, the way that he called me, and he said, "Hey, I got your name from Stacy Uliana." Now, for those who pay attention to the case, just today, I think you learned that Stacy is one of the two appellate lawyers on this case. He called Stacy because Stacy had been involved in a high-profile case in Indiana called State versus David Camm. He was a state trooper that was falsely accused of killing his wife and daughter, and he had round one trial, guilty, reversed, go back to trial, round two, guilty, reversed, round three. Stacy represented him with a guy named Rick Cammon, and they're both really terrific trial lawyers. Stacy's also a great appellate lawyer, and Stacy and Rick secured a not guilty on that third, and he truly was innocent. He really was. It was a real travesty and sad what happened to this guy, and he's a great person, and actually I think I'm going to try to connect with him because I think he's got some interesting things to say to me. We've been communicating, and but Stacy said, I'm not going to get on that case, Brad Rosie. I'm just not going to do it. She knew that Judge Gull was on the case, and there was she just wasn't going to get on the case. Let's just say that. And he apparently asked her, "Well, who do you recommend?" And she said, "Well, Andy Baldwin would be a guy you could call." And then he called me, and it was that awkward conversation. I was just like, "Hey, I just got done with this other case. I probably can get on." Yeah. And then Judge Gull, he said, "Judge Gull's got to call you." So then she called me to kind of vet me, and I knew her daughter, who's a prosecutor, very good prosecutor. And so we kibitzed a little bit, and she said, "Yep, you're good to go." And then that's how I got on the case. And Brad and I didn't know each other from Adam at all at that point. So
Yeah, and I think that that's one thing that I kind of wanted to explain in terms of Indiana. When you've got a smaller town in a smaller county, they don't necessarily have a dedicated public defender's office. Like, obviously here in Chicago, when you talk about Cook County, which is where the city of Chicago is situated, clearly they have a massive public defender's office. My father was a PD in the Cook County Public Defender's Office for 14 years. And, but when you're talking about rural Indiana, that's not the case. So just like, I wanted you to kind of explain, like, what do they do in a situation like that where they don't have a dedicated PD's office? That's why they there's outreach. Like, what is the,
I don't have a whole lot to say about that. I thought it was just kind of cool to hear about how the selection and appointment of Brad and Andy actually occurred. As far as we could see, all it was Diener signs off on the safekeeping order, ships Rick off to DOC without a hearing, and then issues his weird bloodlust order, and then immediately recuses himself from the case. And DB asked a question in here, actually. I wonder, where is it? If Diener picked Rosie, why? Has Rosie been swinging a big stick in Diener's court before? I haven't found shit on Rosie in Carroll County. So wouldn't that other dude be the one that would help identify like a replacement judge? I don't really know how that works. I don't know if Diener really would have anything to do with that, like picking a person, because it sounds like the public defender, whatever, what is it? A public defender's like a roster, more or less, whatever they use for Carroll County. It sounds like Brad was kind of known widely as like the one that you call when you need a thing done or you have a complicated case or however he described it. I don't actually know the answer, but it's an interesting piece of the puzzle that we didn't have before. And it's also interesting that Stacy, per Andy, who was very diplomatic and reserved, I think, Stacy with the public defender's office counsel didn't want the case. That's interesting. It sounds like Gull might have a reputation, maybe, outside of this case for being Gull. Yeah, I'll play it again, DB. Because I don't quite understand that either. It might just be that we can ask a follow-up question. I don't think there's anything about that situation that's like, that he can't talk about.
But for that getting resolved, I would never ever have been on the case, because what happened is I got a phone call from a guy named Brad Rosie, and I didn't know Brad. He's from, for those that don't know, I mean, I'm down here in, south of Indianapolis, and Brad's way up here in Logansport near Delphi. And Brad was kind of the go-to. I mean, he'll tell you about this tomorrow, but he was kind of the go-to. He's not a public defender necessarily, but he's a very good lawyer, obviously. And he was kind of the go-to guy when there was complicated cases or
conflicts,
high-profile cases that they needed really a more of a tactician and a more of an experienced lawyer that knows what they're doing. And so Brad, the way that he called me, and he said, "Hey, I got your name from Stacy Uliana." Now, for those who pay attention to the case, just today, I think you learned that Stacy is one of the two appellate lawyers on this case. He called Stacy because Stacy had been involved in a high-profile case in Indiana called State versus David Camm. He was a state trooper.
Did that yeah. Did that answer our question? Moving on. That was just interesting. And maybe we'll hear more about that tonight from Brad. Hopefully that gets addressed. So we have the appellate. Okay, sorry, DB. Oh, I don't know. I know less probably certainly less than people in the chat about it. So we have the appellate attorneys. Yeah. I was going to wait until the end because I do want to play a Mark Lehman clip, but I'll wait till after. But yeah, here's our order that we just got today. Thanks to Baby Girl DB for sending this. Amy E. Carrozos, Public Defender of Indiana, acknowledges receipt of certification that the above captioned court has been unable to provide local counsel to represent the indigent defendant in the above captioned cause for the purpose of perfecting a direct appeal. And pursuant to the Acts of 1971, Public Law 438, IC 1971, blah, 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 accepts appointment to represent Richard M. Allen. I hereby appoint Stacy R. Uliana and Mark Lehman, attorneys competent in the practice of criminal law, subject to the concurring appointment of record by the Honorable Francis Gull, Special Judge. Pursuant to Indiana Code 3342-3, the minimum fee for services of any attorney appointed by the state public defender and judge under a request made to the state public defender may not be less than the state public defender's schedule of minimum attorney fees approved by the Indiana Supreme Court, blah, blah, blah. Basically, yes, Rick has his attorneys. So Stacy Uliana, I think that's how you say it, and Mark Lehman, which is awesome, amazing, such a relief, like insane relief. Yes, you're right, 4 pits. Stacy has some Supreme Court oral arguments on her site if anyone wants to watch and learn about her. I posted them on Twitter. Awesome. Chelsea, link your Twitter here. Link it. Do a self-plug, please. I wish I knew more about Rosie's work in Carroll County if it was Diener that put his name out there first. Yeah, I don't know. Good question. We'll have to do a dive. We'll have to do a dig. We're going to come back to the appellate attorneys and Mark Lehman at the end after we go through a little more of the interview. This part I really liked. So here he's talking about meeting Rick for the first time, which again, like, it's just cool to hear details about things that we've all thought about for 2 years. Rick was before kind of, being in solitary for so long. Rick was, he was I'm innocent. I'm confused. Why? How did this happen? When I first saw him up in Westville, we walked into they treated us really nice for a while in Westville. There was a lot of lies that were told by Gallipo, by the way. One thing that he said is we weren't allowed to bring our phones in. And then I think he said something along the lines of, if you did, you were violating the rules or something. No, we would walk in and they'd have us show them the phone so that then on the way out, they'd have us show the phone. So they knew that we didn't leave the phone behind or something. So, they treated us very nicely the first time that we ever showed up. Because that building where Rick stayed was so far away from the other buildings, we had to get into a golf cart, the equivalent of a golf cart, and they would have to take us in this golf cart all the way, I don't know how far it is, a few hundred yards, to this building that's just gross and disgusting. And, you go in there and you're like, is this how people, I've been to prisons all over the state of Indiana, probably been in every prison at some point in time. And this is by far the worst one I'd ever seen. And it's like out of a mental asylum, like you would imagine, just where a horror movie might take place in this thing. But they were super nice to us at the beginning, and we went into this room, and it was kind of the captain's room. There was a long like conference room table. And they brought Rick in, like he's Hannibal Lecter, they chained up and stuff. And I actually, that first meeting, I remember they brought water. I actually gave him, he couldn't lift his arms up because of the thing. And I had to give him the water, I had to give him the water out of the hand and give it to him. And, he was just confused. And I just believed him, and I walked away.
you know, thinking this sucks because I believe him. And that's really the hardest thing for a defense lawyer is when, I mean, there's lots of hard things, but one of the hardest, and maybe the hardest one, is I actually believe this guy. And now the weight of his defense is on our shoulders. And, you know, that's rough. And, you know, Rick told me later, I want to tell you this because it kind of connects. So while the trial was going on, we would go down into the lunchroom, well, to the basement of the courthouse, which we call, it was a lunchroom. It was basically, you know, and the guards that were guarding Rick, I want to say they were the nicest people. They were good human beings. They were super nice and sweet and treated Rick like a human being. And so we were allowed to bring him food from, you know, Rick loves Taco Bell. Okay. He would tell you that. There wasn't a Taco Bell, unfortunately, in Delphi, anywhere close, but there was a little Mexican restaurant and he knew about it. And so for example, I brought him tacos, or we would bring him, but ribs or sandwiches or whatever. And so here's what would happen at lunch. It'd be us down there in the basement, the 3 guards, 4 guards. And, you know, I would be down there. Jennifer might be down there. Brad might be down there. It depends on what we had going on in the afternoon. If I had a big cross coming up, I would probably not be down there. But most days I was down there. Most days Matt Hoffman would be down there. And Rick he'd eat. We would laugh. We would, with the guards, we'd joke around. We'd talk about our fantasy football teams. We would, Rick would talk about his, funny stories about it, where he used to work, and he's a really funny guy. And very, it really heartened me because he was being a human. That was the most human interaction that he had in 2 years. And it was just like he was one of the guys, and he was smiling and laughing, and it just made my heart so happy because he was being a regular guy. It wasn't anything exciting. We weren't coming up with solving the world's problems. We were talking about our wives and joking about, how they snored or whatever. And that was very meaningful for me. And then he said to me after one of those lunch sessions, we were getting ready to leave, and he said, "Hey, I want to tell you, I don't know that you remember this, but the first time I met you, you came over and hugged me." And that meant the world to me, because I hadn't seen or touched anybody in a loving way, like in a way where somebody was treating me with respect or not, at least in an angry way, for however long that had been, a month or so. And he said, that meant a lot. I knew at that point in time that, you might actually care about me. And that was just a little thing. It's just what you do as a human being. You see.
Damn, y'all. That was intense. This is the part where I cried. And Andy, I think, got a little emotional talking about that first meeting too. I love hearing about Rick as a person, not as a defendant. Yeah. This broke my heart. This made me cry too, gasping for air at this point. The moment when Andy choked up made me love him so much more. Hey, Scales of Injustice says, I watched the live last night, again this morning, and am gladly watching again here. It's so good. Yeah. Rick has so many people that care about him and his well-being, for sure. Hey, BG. Hey, Christine. Humanizing all of them. Rick, Andy, Brad, Jennifer. Real quick, we do have a comment article I'm going to share. Cleveland, was there a particular one? I'm sharing first the one about Rick's new attorneys. And then if there was a specific article, Cleveland, that you wanted us to look at, I can pull that up too. Maybe. With Holman. Okay, I'll pull that one up next, Cleveland. Actually, I'm going to share it this way. So this one is, so let's first look at this breaking news, and it's a free access. They've been doing most of the Abby and Libby content, I guess, except the Holman interview. Apparently, they're just kind of sharing free access, whatever. You don't need a subscription. But first, let's read this one. This one, I shared it to y'all if you want to save it. Richard Allen's appellate attorneys have a long history of winning appeals, including the release of a former Indiana State police officer who served 12 years of a life sentence after being convicted for the murders of his wife and 2 children. Thursday, Logansport attorney Mark Lehman and Bargersville attorney Stacey Ileana were assigned to represent Allen in his appeal. Allen was convicted and sentenced to 130 years in prison for killing Abby and Libby. A jury determined that he kidnapped and killed them. Ileana began her career in criminal defense at the Indiana Public Defender Council, a state agency dedicated to improving the quality of representation provided at public expense, according to her website. She co-authored the Indiana Evidence Manual, Indiana Sentencing Manual, Indiana Motions Manual, Search and Seizure Pamphlet, and Confessions Pamphlet. Damn. Oh, we've actually heard, so she was interviewed. Okay, so we've actually heard an interview by her before when Rick was first arrested. I believe that it might have been Fox 59. It might have even been the same segment where they interview, and DB help me, Innocence Project Baddie, who talked about the ballistics evidence and all the issues with that. I believe that we heard Ileana talk a little bit about some of the concerning things that were happening early on in the case. I don't actually remember, though, for sure what. Maybe it was a different interview. Anyway, we've definitely seen her before around. One of her more notable cases was the appeal of former ISP trooper David Camm. Camm, who always asserted his innocence, was convicted of murdering his wife and his 2 children in September of 2000. Camm was initially convicted of the crimes and he appealed. On an initial retrial, he was again found guilty. Camm appealed again and was given a second opportunity for retrial. On his second retrial, he was again found guilty. He appealed a 3rd time, and this time Camm was represented by Ileana. Camm spent more than 12 years in prison before Indiana Supreme Court reversed his murder conviction and life without parole sentence on grounds that evidence that should not have been heard by the jury was used against him at trial. Lehman, Mark Lehman, here he is. Look at that picture. That's a cute picture. Lehman is one of Indiana's most seasoned appellant litigators, according to his website. He has tried nearly 200 appeals for clients before the Indiana Court of Appeals, Indiana Supreme Court, and United States Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit. He studied at Indiana University and clerked in various courts. The attorneys have 30 days from the date of Allen's sentencing, December 20th, to file his appeal. It's interesting that Amy, who authored this, didn't say anything about the fact that Mark Lehman successfully argued before the Indiana Supreme Court to reinstate Brad and Andy after Judge Gull erroneously committed structural error and kicked them off the case. That's interesting that that didn't get mentioned. Okay, next up, Cleveland said there's a new Holman interview on the comments, so let's see. And then we'll jump back to Andy. But since we're here, oh, good. Mr. Thumb. Oh, log in. Demon also walks in dick first. Yeah, for sure. She sucks, Cleveland. I'm sorry. This woman sucks. She's awful. My first... doesn't matter. We can talk about her another time. Yeah. Why do you think Holman's doing all the interviews? He has a lot to explain. He's got a lot he needs to get ahead of. This is from... Let me log in. Ugh, Angela. Do I remember my login? Here we go. These are all great answers, and I agree with all of them. We were never going to get... I just logged in. Oops, no, I didn't. Oh, y'all. If I can't figure out my login, we might come back to this. Is my subscription active? Yes, it is. So why can't I see this page? That's suspicious. Okay, we're going to come back to this in a little bit because I do want to keep it moving, but we'll come back to the Holman interview, Cleveland. And if someone gets it before I do, please post it. But I need to like reset my password probably. I don't feel like fucking with that right now, but we will. Because I am a proud subscriber of the Carroll County Comment. I just don't know how I just don't have my login saved. Anyway, back to Andy. Next thing I want to talk about, we talked about humanizing Rick. This part concerned me, as I'm sure it concerned everybody. Please hold.
It's a question that a lot of people are asking. As you sit here right now, do you know how he's doing?
No. So the last time I talked to Rick was after the sentencing. So I had planned to go up and talk to Holman afterwards, but Jennifer took care of that apparently. After the disgusting things that he said, and that would have not been the first time that I had confronted him, but I'm glad I didn't because it was not appropriate, and it would not have been appropriate, and I would have probably been a little bit more animated than Jennifer was. She's a little bit more classy probably. The reason I wasn't there is I followed Rick out because what I wanted Rick to know was, you know, there was a drumbeat going on in that sentencing of basically don't appeal, don't appeal. If you really found God, you're not going to appeal was essentially the thing that was being stated. And that was, you know, that's disgusting to me. I'm sorry. I mean, you know, with everything that has happened, you know, everybody, Rick Allen is more than anybody, but the people in Delphi, the people that have paid a lot of attention to this case throughout the world, I guess, everybody needs to have an actual resolution where the evidence actually comes in, and which is one of the reasons, you know, that the appeal is happening. But when they were, Rick is a good, like, human being, you know, when he, you know, he doesn't like that the families don't have closure. You know, that's upsetting to him. And even as an innocent person, that bothers him because he's just like we are. I mean, when he sees upsetting photographs on at trial, that's upsetting to him. And so I was worried that Rick loves his family, and he wants, he wanted them to move on, perhaps. That'd be easy for him to think that way, knowing him. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know Rick Allen. I mean, I know him as his lawyer, and I know him. I consider him a friend, but I consider him, to be a good person, a good human being. And I followed him out because and I told him, I said, Rick, do not get sucked in to thinking that you should not appeal this. Do not get sucked in. He sat there and said, I want to appeal it. And I was a little worried because I was sitting right next to him, and the judge asked him, do you want to appeal this? Some words to that effect. Now that actually doesn't happen that often. Usually that's decided later because we have 30 days to make decisions. So
it's like she was trying to use the pressure that they just tried to manipulate.
That was very interesting to me. So a couple of things about that. For starters, it is abundantly clear, and it should be to anybody paying attention, that the state, the families, Doug Carter, the judge, do not want Rick Allen to appeal his conviction, which is cuckoo bananas. Even for them, I ask you, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Are they really under the impression that that first of all, I would hope that every single factually innocent, wrongfully convicted person would appeal. But also, if you're convicted for something, you appeal. Like, are you new here to the planet? So that was odd. The second thing that really made me go, was, why is Gull? So you have the sentencing hearing, right? And everybody's up there. He said the drumbeat during that entire sentencing was don't appeal, don't appeal. If you've really found God, weaponizing this newfound faith that seems to have really sustained Rick. Clearly, he's still alive. He brings his, pocket Bible to trial with him, and he cares. I mean, good for him. That's something that's very important to him, at least it seems to be from what we've heard. Way to weaponize that against him and try and use that. It's interesting that Holman accused Rick of using religion to manipulate his family, when it actually appears that Holman and the state of Indiana are weaponizing religion to manipulate their wrongfully convicted Delphi murder monster. So that's interesting. I mean, we already know that projection is like their number one pastime, but that's very interesting. And Judge Gull looking at Rick during sentencing, after everybody just said, if you found God, you won't appeal, blah, 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 blah. And so naturally, Judge Gull, thank you, Judge Jessica, asks him in front of everybody, you gonna appeal? Like, he doesn't owe you an answer to that question right now. What purpose does that serve? She probably just wanted to get him on the record, panicking or being pressured and saying no or something so that she could fuck him later. And I mean that, you know what I mean? That's just very, very concerning. So again, shit that doesn't happen in any other case. Here we have Judge Gull behaving like a lunatic, the state police behaving like a lunatic. And I'm glad that Andy followed him out after that sentencing. And I'm glad that he put his arm around him and I hope sternly and forcefully encouraged him and don't listen to that shit. Like, fuck that noise. That's so frustrating. I wish that there was a way that we could that Rick could actually be exposed to the world outside of solitary confinement in Westville Correctional Facility, to know that the world is bigger than Carroll County and Judge Gull's courtroom. And we see what they're doing. It's insane. I've never heard that before. At sentencing, do you want to appeal or not? Bitch, I don't fucking know. Can you give me a minute? And maybe I'm going to change my mind. So I believe if you go to the, what is it? It's the Reddit. I think this is right. And someone correct me if you know something different, but I'm pretty sure that there's the Seeking Justice. Yeah. So funny. The Seeking Justice subreddit. If you go to Delphi Docs and Delphi Dicks or Dicks of Delphi on Reddit, and you just look up Seeking Justice, one word, I know that they do like share and post and link to that person who runs that sub, and they have, I think, more info about how to write him. Anyway, yeah, I like this idea. Shell says, where is it? I wonder if there's a way to hold signs where he can see them outside the prison. I mean, a long shot, but a dream. I hope that once, I'm not sure why they're not allowed to talk to him now that he's in Westville. And we're actually going to, I think that's coming up if it's not the next part I highlighted. He does talk about like there's this period of time where you can't talk to a convicted inmate while they're being processed and placed in wherever they're going to spend their sentence. But I don't know why they can't talk to him now. I don't know. We'll have to come back to that. I loved how Andy looked at the camera when addressing Carter and Holman. Yeah, I know. We would need golf carts for that. Fuck, true, DB. Because that, yeah. He's not even in a normal fucking part of the prison. We probably couldn't even get to that part if we wanted to because of security. It's not even like, it wouldn't be a News Nation situation, unfortunately. Amanda says, I feel like they're trying to get another confession out of him. For sure. For sure. Another confession or somehow going to figure out a way to try and get him to waive his appeal or something. The best insult of the night was Andy describing Brian Harshman's personality and appearance like a cop. Mm-hmm. Does every state employee go on vacation after the verdict? Why not? It's his attorney, Jeebus. I know. Drones with flags, hashtag free Rick Allen. I like it. They'd shoot him down, but maybe he'd get to see him first. Hey, young black economist, good to see you. I think the most important thing is how other inmates see him. Who knows? There's a lot of dudes in prison accused of harming kids, and they're not all targets. That's a low myth that they all get targeted. Yeah. Why 6 days? I think, well, yeah, let's keep, I'm going to keep playing it because I'm pretty sure that's the next thing he talks about. Jerome swatted Andrew. That her stepping a foot outside her house, and that's when she tries to come here. Yeah, it'll shoot me from the sky. Send him a Taco Bell cravings box. Carrier pigeon. Oh my god. Y'all are funny. All right. Continuing. Oh, wait, no. 1 minute and 1 second. I wrote down timestamps, y'all. I'm getting better about like doing a prepare. Can't read my handwriting though. I think that's a 2. Here we go.
Sucks. I would then think about Rick and think about what is he going through? I mean, whenever I had that feeling like how just it sucks, I would then think about Rick and think about what is he going through? I mean, who cares about me? You know, who cares about that I'm going through this? I signed up for this, you know, when I became a defense trial lawyer. That's what I opted to do. Rick didn't opt to be arrested, thrown, you know, have no hearing that sends him to the Department of Corrections, have, you know, that sends him to thrown, opted to do. Rick didn't opt to be arrested, thrown, you know, have no hearing that sends him to the Department of Corrections, have, you know, that none of that was that he signed up for. And yet there he is. And now he's back there. You know, how horrible. After all those videos that were played at the trial, I mean, can somebody in the DOC have some humanity or common sense, for crying out loud? Just not put him there. How hard is that? There's whatever, 7, 8 other facilities. You're telling me he can't go to any of those other facilities where he doesn't have bad memories? I mean, come on.
I mean, you know as well as I do. I mean, at this point, he's a convicted, child killer. So, like, and they're treating him as such.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that is the road that we have to hoe is defense.
So I think the bigger point, I mean, obviously, I hear the word safekeeping and like my brain starts to vibrate. Just again, reminding everybody, if you see this out there on the internets or on the web or anywhere on the street, hear it from your grandma, correct them. There was no safekeeping hearing ever. Rick was put in DOC. Putting him in DOC without a hearing, without a safekeeping hearing. Big, 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 big problem. Also, why is he back in Westville? So Rick spent 13 months, right? I think 13 months at Westville Correctional Facility, which we know is a shithole. They're literally spending over $1 billion in Indiana to build a new Westville. Essentially, they're closing it. Please shut up. I knew as soon as I said that, I was like, I want to hear about this. Anyway, they're building a new Westville. They're shutting down Westville because it's just fucking shithole. It's probably not even like, probably not even fit for human life. But anyway, it's not one of the DOC facilities that is equipped for housing inmates that have serious mental illnesses, mental health diagnoses. And that's just a given. This is the whole fucking shit, as my friend P would say. It's remarkable to me and very confounding and alarming and confusing, mostly alarming, that DOC would want Rick back in Westville. And we talked about this last night, but like, why the fuck would they want him back there? They shouldn't want anything to do with him. Again, DOC will be sued over this case. They know that. They're not stupid. Their attorneys are already like doing push-ups and sit-ups and prepping for such. Like, that's not a surprise to anybody that there will be a civil litigation will be coming over the treatment of Rick and over the fact that they violated their own policies, their own state DOC policies implemented as a result of the IPASS ACLU settlement, class action settlement, where seriously mentally ill prisoners were being housed in solitary confinement for more than 30 days. They suffered extreme harm as a result. And there was a major settlement agreement that stipulated that the DOC had to implement policies, not suggestions, hard policies, that inmates that had serious mental illness, I think SMI, serious mental illness, could not be housed in solitary confinement or SHU for 30 days or longer, and that they should be housed in facilities that are equipped for treating and sustaining and safely housing inmates with serious mental illness. Because in the United States, believe it or not, even if you're convicted of murder, even if you're a convicted felon in a state penitentiary, you still have your basic human rights. You still have constitutional rights. And it's already been decided, like the Supreme Court's already decided this for us. Prisons in Indiana, everywhere, but in Indiana, the DOC cannot deprive inmates of basic mental health treatment. They can't. It's a violation of, I believe, their 8th. Is it the 8th? I'm really bad with the amendments. I believe that is an outright violation of your 8th Amendment. It's cruel and unusual punishment. The punishment is the confinement. It doesn't need to be any worse than that. Being confined for the rest of your life, separated from the rest of the world, from your family, from every comfort, that is your punishment. because he lies. Hey, the band VIA. Because he lies. Because he is a carny level liar. Hey, Barbie. So many parallels. I read pregnant teen when you. Right. Anyway, all of that to say, he shouldn't be back in Westville. The fact that they brazenly put him back in Westville after only 6 days after his sentencing, he's already back there. Andy didn't want to say it outright, but we've been saying it for months. No, actually, I've been saying it for years. We've been saying it for years. They want to kill this man. They want to kill Rick Allen. Or they want to drive him to psychosis again so that they can get more, I don't know, do what they did to Corcoran and have him waive his right to appeal forever. Like, get fucked. These people are awful. The Eighth Amendment is to protect against cruel and unusual punishment, not to guarantee it. Right, so they violated his Eighth Amendment right. Can you talk about how Jerry got caught? Yeah, I'm coming up on that one. Baby, promise. I've actually starred that one. Okay. DB, this is for you. I'm going out of order, but this is for you because you saved my life yesterday.
Remember, you wanted this, okay? Well, that's what's happening right now, okay? Just, you're already out there. You're so close, worships them and thinks that they're awesome. They are not. Let me tell you one little anecdote about Jerry, okay? We're sitting there, the tables are so close to one another. This is a dumb little story, but it really highlights who this guy is, okay? And again, I wouldn't be on here but for the fact that you're already out there on these podcasts that you're on doing this stuff, okay? I wouldn't even be talking about any of this, all right? So as, Jack Reacher, the movie, is that, remember, you wanted this, okay? Well, that's what's happening right now, okay? This is just a dumb little anecdote. We're during the trial, I said to Richard, the jury's going to be looking at you and they're going to be assessing. We talked about it in jury selection a little bit. Is that appropriate for the jury to do? The reality is they're going to be doing it no matter what they say. So when the photos get up, and it could be upsetting to anybody, an innocent man could look at and then become upset, or, I said, for example, when the photos are up there, put it into 4 quadrants, look at the upper left, which will be trees and stuff, and just write down on your notes, trees, leaves, sky. When somebody's testifying, just write down word for word as much as you're able to, kind of like what Bob and Andrea and others did. Write down word for word. That will take your focus away from the emotion behind everything. Well, Jerry Holman was seated, and it was, let me tell you, it was intentional. He's a bully. He's trying to be a bully. If you heard his ridiculous interview, the second interview of October 26th, where he freaks out at the end, I'm going to prove that, all that stuff that Bob, I think, was in there for. Yeah, that's a little glimpse of who this bully is. He's sitting next to Rick, like this far apart, and he's trying to read his notes. He's trying to read what Richard Allen is writing down. Matt, I was bothered by it, but I'm like, he's not writing anything down. I don't even want to get into it. Matt Hoffman got irritated, sends me a note. Stop him from doing that. I'm like, yeah, you're right on that. I thought Richard leaned back. I looked at Holman and I said, stop looking at his notes. There was a witness on the stand. It wasn't my witness. Holman, he's shocked at any time that anybody, confronts him, because he's used to people just, acting like he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then at the break, he came over and tried to talk to me. I wasn't looking. I mean, I can't hardly even see. I said, get out of my face and just go sit over there, And this is why this guy doesn't like me.
I wasn't looking. I can't even see. Davey says, I don't have eyes. I wasn't looking. I can't even see. That is the what did you say last night, DB? Like, that is the most Jerry. Like, that is so Jerry. For me. Like, I can't see. So stupid. I love that. Get out of my face. Go sit over there. What an embarrassment. What an absolute fucking embarrassment that man is. I wasn't looking. I can't even see. I got. I'm blind. My left eye. Jesus. Oh my God. Anyway, okay. I'm going back. Now I'm going back in order. Okay, motion to let bail. I've been thinking about this a lot since last night. So we're going to talk about it. Max, if you're watching, marry me, says Woman Doing Chaos. We're going to start a Sister Wives compound. Boys can come too. Guys, gals, non-binary pals. Everyone's welcome in Krebin. Why can't I find this? Oh, here it is. Okay.
Fence work. And I get there and that thing advanced. Was that the first safekeeping hearing that they had?
No.
That was supposed to be.
There was no
My
safekeeping
memory-
hearing.
That motion, I guess.
My memory of that is that Brad and I, the judge said it in February of 2023.
And again, so the question was basically like, what happened to the bail let hearing, which is basically the hearing where the defense can request it, and it is what it sounds like. They're requesting bond for their client, but it puts the burden on the state to show the evidence that they have to prove that that they have the goods, is what Andy was saying. And I like that. The state has to prove that they have the goods, and they have to do it before a judge and before the defense. And that way it's like 2, 3, 4-fold. The benefits, I think, to having one are that, one, you get to put the state to task to actually prove that they have the goods, that this was a lawful arrest, and that they do have enough probable cause and evidence to hold this person without bond. And then also that we can't see the chat from last night. Oh, you mean the defense diaries chat? Do y'all want to see that? I think I can. How do I? Here. Can you all see that? Yes, you can. Okay. Anyway, so the question was like, whatever happened to that bond bail let hearing that y'all had requested? It was supposed to be held in February 2023. Like the second week, I think like the 18th or something of February was when it was scheduled for, or maybe the 14th. I don't remember, but he's going to talk about that here.
And we just, if I could do it all over again, I mean, you know, of course, I've been going through the worst mental and emotional post-mortem of all time for me as a lawyer over the last 6 weeks or so, or however long it's been. And, you know, that's one of those things where if I could do it all over again, I would have just done it. You know, we weren't really ready. You got to understand, we didn't have hardly any evidence at that point in time. Much of the evidence didn't come in until September of 2023. And we didn't have Libby's phone until September of 2023. We didn't have a lot of we didn't have any of the Todd Click stuff until September. Now I knew about the odinism stuff in March because I was going through the stuff that we did have, and it's like,
I just want to highlight that because remember, and if you don't remember, that's fine, because this is a ridiculously minute detail in the scheme of things, but remember there's a video I posted of a county council or county commissioner. I think it's a county council meeting in Carroll County. It's from February 2023, and it's Nick McClelland. He's sitting before the council requesting more money, and he is requesting more money. His argument is that he has this huge murder case coming up, and he needs more help he says, we're drowning, you know, we're absolutely drowning. I have a skeleton crew. I have all of these really, really important, time sensitive tasks and deadlines coming up. And like, he's like panicked. He's like frazzled about it. He's like freaking the fuck out. And this is literally, I think that meeting was on like a Tuesday, and the discovery deadline, when they were supposed to turn over all of their discovery to the defense because they were going to have this bail hearing the next week, was on Friday. So he had a couple days, and he's before the council freaking the fuck out. He's having to work 40 hours a week. Yeah, exactly. So we know that already, that the state had not turned over any discovery to the defense by February 2023. They're supposed to have this bail-out hearing. And how is the defense to have a bail-out hearing when they don't have any discovery minus the PCA? The PCA that's weak sauce. Right, exactly, DB. I don't know if he realized yet at that time, because the case was only like 3 or 4 months, you know, old at that time. I don't think he realized like that he had Judge Gull in his, you know, that she was blind paid for. I think maybe he was, because that would have been like the first deadline that they would have missed. At some point he caught on that like literally he could do anything he wanted, including violating the trial rules and his own professional and ethical conduct rules, and access an ex parte filing by the defense, and then put the information that he learned in that ex parte filing in a motion and file it publicly, and nothing happens. That's the point of a bail hearing. They have presented nothing. Let's go. Right. Yeah. And I think Andy said even last night, in retrospect, in hindsight, they maybe would have done that differently, because the state would have had to put on the evidence they had, which would have been nothing. Would it have made a difference? I don't think so. I honestly don't think anything that they did would have really made any significant difference, because Rick needed to be convicted. I really believe that. Anyway, I just want to come back to that, because I remember like February 2023 feels like 100 years ago, but there was a lot of shit going on behind the scenes at that time. That was when Rick was really deteriorating. That was when Randy bitch made Jones, the Odinist guard, got made supervisor of APOD. That was when these discovery deadlines are coming up. The prosecutor's starting to freak out. Yeah, it was just a very maybe like tenuous time. Anyway, I wish that they had the hearing. They didn't. Would it have made a difference? Probably not. Who knows? We'll never know. Holman. More Holman. I really like this story, so I want us to listen to this story again. It's about when Andy is deposing Jerry Holman in August 2023, right? Yeah. This case feels like it's been going on forever. So when was the Franks filed? 2023. Yeah. Okay. So August 2023. 139. Oh my God. I'm getting confused with the two chats. Okay. This will do.
And so, you know, those guys are a large reason why I'm even on this podcast and doing the other things that I'm going to be doing. Had they just, you know, taken the win and let the process work out, I might not even be sitting here, you know. So, because here's a story that Jerry Holman will not want to have told. While he's getting, you know, kind of an aggressive questioning by me in the deposition on August the 10th, 2023. It's a Friday. This is a God thing, you know. I believe that. The last deposition of the day happened to be with a guy named Kevin Murphy, who was in the hallway, okay, waiting and waiting and waiting. And at the end of Holman's deposition, he walks into the hallway, and I hear some type of something going on out there. raised voices or whatever. Later, what I find out from Murphy, and he testified to this on August the 1st. So again, this is out there, but it probably wasn't really magnified. That was a long day, and this was near the end of the day. But here's what Murphy testified to. Holman had, on his way out, I gave him the 12-page. I said, hey, that's for you. I want you to study up on that. You need to become familiar with that. I'm challenging him to investigate this stuff, right?
Begging
him. Yeah. And it's contentious, but and I told him, you can read it in the depo. I said, I don't have any faith in you. I don't think you're going to do this at all. Oh, you don't know anything about me. No, I've done this a long time. I know exactly who you are. I know guys like you. And of course I was right. They didn't do any real investigation afterward, just enough to say that they did. But anyway, he walks out into the hallway. I hear a kerfuffle of some type. And later on, what I found out from Murphy was, here's what happened. He had walked out. Holman had walked out with the 12-page Odin report drafted by Murphy. And he said to Murphy, how the hell did they get this? Well, he didn't say hell. He said the F word. I don't know what's allowed to be said on this thing. But
say what you're free to say all the words, but you don't have to. We get it.
How the F did they get this? Okay, so
you're fully aware that it exists, and you're fully aware that you were trying to keep it from the defense.
That's what it looked like. That's what it sounded like.
What it sounds like.
And by the way, the last person to see the mimicked crime scene photo that was sent up to the Lafayette Police Post, Ryan Winters, in his report says, I haven't read it in a while, but I'm certain this is what I went over to talk to Holman, and I showed him what this guy from Georgia had shown me, the mimicked crime scene. I wanted this particular person re-investigated, re-interviewed. That was never done. And then magically, that mimicked crime scene photo, poof, is gone.
I would crawl across flaming hot shards of glass for Jerry Holman. Jerry Holman is not a liar. Jerry Holman has lied more times that we know of than most people probably lie in a fucking lifetime. This is insane. He is the biggest liar on the planet. He is a bigger liar than Mullen. Mullen is just dumb about it, so it's obvious. He's not a liar. He just can't see. He's not a liar. He just doesn't have eyes. Come on, man. Give me a break. I can't even see. I can't even hardly see. Ridiculous. I just want to play that story again. So he gets caught. So Andy shows him the report, and he's like, I don't know what this is. What is this? Like, implying that they made it up or that they wrote it and that it didn't come from the state's own investigation and the state's own discovery, pretending like playing dumb like he does so well. And then goes outside and starts and screams in Murphy's face, where the fuck did they get this? Bruh, wait till you're outside, at least out of earshot. God, these guys are crazy. Lying eyeless jackass. It's just wild, just brazen, unapologetic liars who lie. Anyway, do we want to? Yeah, that's how brazen he is. He's the most brazen. I was going to skip this part, but I think it's good. I'm trying to remember. I don't actually know what this says because I can't read my handwriting. Okay.
That I'm sitting in right now in Franklin, Indiana. It is a local cop. This is what local police do. They come in, they take my statement, they find out what happened, and then that's how it works. But Jerry Holman had to get involved, and the conflict is he had a disdain for me, and he knew that, I mean, it was very obvious, and he knew that we were, you know, attacking his investigation. And that how many, what are there, 2,000 state police employees? Any one of them could have investigated this, but Jerry Holman wanted to investigate it.
Right.
And so he reached out to the Johnson County. I'd actually talked to the person he talked to today, just because I want to make sure I was correct in this. And, you know, I want to talk to Lance Hamner, the elected prosecutor. Well, I've been dealing in this county for 30 years. Believe it or not, Jerry, I'm very well liked down here. And I could tell you story after story about why they respect me.
Just as an aside, and I'm not going to make this stream about Jerry Holman because it's not worth it, and it's about something bigger and more important than Jerry Holman, but it's interesting, this arrogance and this ego of this man, really of the entire task force, but certainly of Jerry Holman, is unprecedented. He believes that his word is to be believed, right? So he's so arrogant and brazen and clueless about life and the world outside of Jerry Holman's, you know, immediate circle. He calls the Johnson County prosecutor and the Johnson County police because he personally wants to investigate and interview Andy Baldwin, and he tries to have him. Andy talks about this. I probably should have kept it playing. He tries to have Andy arrested, investigated and or arrested for this leak. And the prosecutor in this other county, this prosecutor that knows Andy and likes Andy, was like, no, like what? You know, they weren't going to just like acquiesce to what Holman said because he wanted them to. Much like Jerry Holman can't just call another jurisdiction in another state, make false allegations against a citizen there, and expect that local law enforcement agency to take his word for it and just go arrest somebody because he says to. It's not how it fucking works, Jerry. Anyway. What a fucking loser.
How I do, and again, I don't say that, I don't want to say that in a braggy way. I'm just saying, as a human being, it's Brad and I both the whole way through here are like, we're not used to people not liking us because we're nice people.
Probably hard for them.
We treat people with humanity and respect. How has this happened? It's been very upsetting, you know? So I think Jerry was probably very surprised to know that, you know, the secretary that I talked to, she immediately reached out. Who is this guy? He's, you know, what's he doing? You know, and he knew that there was no crime. I was, you know, a friend of mine, we all know the story. And why am I being treated as a criminal here? You know, I mean, yet that's what he did. He asked the special prosecutor for charges to be filed against me, you know, then I would be arrested. That's real third world country, banana republic type of stuff. I'm a person in power. I have the power of a badge. I can have you arrested, and I'm going to figure out a way to do it. Thankfully, we had people with common sense that don't just give in. I mean, listen, I don't have every prosecutor around the state that likes me. There's a common theme among those that don't. There's about 3 counties where I'm not well liked. All 3 of them, they let the police run all over them. Mm-hmm. They don't, when the police do bad things or aren't honest or skirt the edges, these are prosecutors that will overlook it and blame the defense. And then when you have a guy like me that's not going to put up with that, then all of a sudden you're public enemy number 1 and a bad guy. And, you know, I think that's what happened here is, and so how was I treated? I was treated that way. I was,
I'm fairly new here, but I appreciate and recognize you for your dedication and truth, and I hereby demand you address me as your new BFF. Fair enough. Jessica Gilman, everybody. Thank you so much, Jessica. That's so sweet. I'm glad that you're here. I appreciate you. We are all BFFs here in Carbon. Jerry Holman contacted the prosecutor in another county where he doesn't live and asked him to to file charges against Andy Baldwin related to an incident of quote unquote conversion, a misdemeanor. The same incident in which Andy happens to also be listed as the victim of the conversion. Is Jerry just like, I'm trying to think of how to say this without, never mind. I don't know. I worry about his cognition sometimes. Page 8 gate. Tax dollars at work. Thankfully, the prosecutor didn't do that. But like, listen, y'all. How many people have gotten arrested associated with the Delphi case for something where we're like, huh? So we've got obviously Mitch Westerman. We've got Todd Click. We've got Erica. I don't know. I can't remember her last name. Tried to have me arrested. Not that I'm associated with the case, but he certainly didn't like what I had to say about it. Tried to have Andy arrested. Who else is he trying to have? Tried to have Fortson arrested, or at least threatened that he was going to. Who else is he tried to have arrested? Yep, we got Click. Definitely Click. Crazy. That's the secretary that called him. I didn't get that part. Haha, fuck you, Jerry. Even the secretary's like, who the fuck is this thumb in here trying to get you arrested? Like, trying to, yeah, I'm a loser. Very welcome. Y'all are a great group. Thanks. Oops. Did Jerry push Nick to do the contempt charges? Oh, they tried to arrest yeah. Can you get thrown in jail for contempt? Yeah. I think that he, that's a good question, DB. Man, it's a really good question. Probably. You think that Nick yields to Jerry? Probably. Actually, have I ever seen Nick McClellan and Jerry Holman interacting? Have I ever seen Nick McClellan and Doug Carter interacting? Hearing. Yes, he was talking about Greeno, Braun. Anthony Greeno made explicit, specific, excuse me, threats against Baldwin and Baldwin's children, actually. And nobody did shit about it. They let Greeno sit in the fucking front row at the trial. Ridiculous. So here he gets into Judge Gull being the first chair for the prosecution, basically on her own motion. Judge Gull basically eliminated out the third-party suspect defense before the prosecutor even filed his motion in limine. But we know that she nudged him to file it weeks before trial.
Richard Allen, then against the stuff that I've talked about in the Franks memo. And so if there was not a nexus there, I would say there's not a nexus with Richard Allen. So
agreed.
Now that the April, I believe 28th is, so Nick and the prosecution team had hired an Odin expert. They knew since September the 18th, 2023, so October, November, December, January, February, March, April, 7 months earlier, they were fully aware of a third-party suspect defense. They prepared for a third-party suspect defense. They hired an Odin expert. They subpoenaed people in that made sense to defend against the third-party suspect Odin angle. And then we got an email that really altered You know, basically it was in my opinion, it was a bright neon sign. I called Brad right after we got it. It was around 11 in the morning. Brad, within 12 hours, unless Nick is a complete idiot, he's going to be filing a motion in limine to keep out third-party suspect evidence based upon this email that we received.
Yes, it was clear.
And that's part of the record. It's part of our motion. So I think I'm allowed to talk about what's on the record, but that was an email that Judge Gull sent us that we talked about as one of the reasons we tried to have her removed from the case. I don't want to say anything disrespectful about Judge Gull. You know, obviously we didn't all agree with each other all the time.
I'll do it. Fuck you, Judge Gull. April 28th, 2024. Nobody asked Frances what she thought, what she knew, how she felt, really for any kind of input or opinion whatsoever. But Frances took it upon herself, sua sponte, to include in this email something totally unrelated to what they were discussing. I, Frances Gull, am quite familiar with the law regarding third-party perpetrators, which, by the way, we now know she's the opposite of familiar with the law. She has no idea what a nexus is. She has a worse grasp on the law than probably Jerry Holman. I am quite familiar with the law regarding third-party perpetrators, and unless the defense can provide a nexus between any alleged third-party perpetrators and the charged crimes, those allegations are unsupported and will be inadmissible. She just I like how she just sandwiches that in between her paragraphs, like had nothing to do with what they were discussing, but she's like, by the way, that is so crazy. This woman is a loony bird. An absolute loony bird. I'm almost done, y'all.
And, you know, there's the whole thing, by the way, this lends itself to the conversation about how did we get, people don't know this. I knew that it wasn't on Richard Allen's first interrogation from October the 13th. I knew Richard never said, I drove westbound. He never said that. He said the opposite of that. And that hurt them. Yet Mullen said that. And he led the jury to believe that. And the problem was, we can't get the video in of the interrogation because it's hearsay in Indiana. I don't know if that's how it is in Illinois, but it's kind of crazy, right? Everybody thought that we could introduce Richard Allen's interrogations that we were desperately wanting in, and we couldn't get it in there. And therefore, you know, I would have to jump through a bunch of hoops to try to get Mullen impeached on the lie that he told that Richard Allen said in his interrogation that he traveled westbound on 300 North. And I was furious. I was furious because I knew that was an important piece of information. And when Mullen got off the stand, there was a break between the direct and the cross. Timing is everything in trial work. Sometimes at the end of the day, you know, you have time to go do a cross. Sometimes there's a break. Sometimes there isn't. I had about a 15-minute break. But the one thing I had not accounted for, I never thought he would say that. So I need to scour, therefore, the transcript of the first interrogation of Richard Allen to look for when Richard said, no, I would go through town and not west. So I had not accounted for that. So I didn't have a chapter sheet on that. So I have to scour through that. But on my way out, I saw Mullen and I looked at him. And this, you know, again, I'm not a confrontational person, but when somebody lies like that and then somebody's life is on the line, it really bothers me. And I said to Mullen, you ought to be ashamed of yourself for what you just did. You know, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. And he just looked at me.
He ain't. He ain't. We know this. They have no shame. Y'all, my nose hurts. I've been blowing my nose a lot. Sure, we have chapter sheets. I want all the transcripts. I want the depositions. I want all the exhibits. It seems as though certainly Andy, maybe not neither of them, they likely don't realize that none of the evidence that they got admitted, the public evidence, none of it is public. You think that they know? Like, I think Andy, from what he was saying, his frustration is that certainly the mainstream media and a lot of the more mainstream, narrative or whatever out there about the Franks memo suggests that most people who criticize it have not actually read it, right? And so he's like, go read it. Like, read it. I can understand his frustration. You think he knows that, like, most people following this case have, not only that, like, if there were exhibits available to read, we would be just devouring them. I want them. I want all of them. How do we get them? Y'all? At least you have a nose, Ange. Think about the eyelets, like a whole minute. Think about the eyelets. I can't even see. Why would he say read the depots? I think they think that all of the public exhibits are public. We had the exhibits. If the public had access to certain, like, now, obviously he's been convicted, but if the public had any access to this trial and to the evidence and the exhibits, are you kidding me? I don't think he'd be convicted. I don't. Like, public pressure, there'd be no way. Everyone would be like, what the fuck did we just watch? I don't know. I think we could get him. So can the attorneys or the defendant not release shit themselves if they so choose, if the defendant chooses? Doesn't Rick own his own discovery? I mean, they're public. They were admitted. The media got to look at them. Rafael Sanchez got to doodle sketch a fucking stupid replica of one of the exhibits with his crayons. Why can't they? So what, though? If other people have them, why can't they just share them? I don't get it. They're public. It's not illegal. Judge Gull would frown upon it and threaten to arrest you, but they can't. They're already public, like, by law. I don't understand how this is a thing. Allie was kind of like, send it to any one of us, but I don't remember what they were talking about. It might have been the Frank's exhibits. It'd be nice if we had, like, a content creator who was a lawyer who had a personal line of communication with the attorney. Maybe. Hey, TT, good to see you. Maybe Bad Boy Brad will come through. Bad Boy Brad. Raphael has an exclusive interview with the defense attorneys. Fiend, you're lying. There's no fucking way. Can you imagine? This was an interesting piece of information we didn't know. Bree Wilbur stayed the night with Kelsey and, by default, Abby and Libby the night before, the 13th. I wonder if part of Gull removing them ahead of appeal was to keep them from requesting transcripts. Yeah, well, they requested the transcript from October 28th, the very first, the initial appearance or hearing, for Rick on October 28th, and Gull said no. She said, we can let the appellate attorneys request that, which, by the way, they need to do that. If it's public, it's public, period. Fucking send it. I'll fucking do it. Raphael has a drawing of an interview with the attorney. All right. Lying liars who lie. I think this is the last one I wanted to share. Second to last one. That's what Ajay said. I think Andy even said that when he was talking about why didn't any. I don't remember actually what the context was.
With all three of you guys to address the things that were being said that I wanted to come straight out of your mouth. So one of the narratives is that Rick Allen desperately wanted to confess, and he wanted to plead out, and that it's the defense attorneys. You wouldn't let him do it. That Rick Allen wanted to come into court and confess and apologize to the families, but it was you, Andy, and Brad and Jennifer that stopped him from doing that. Why did you do that, Andy?
Yeah, that's a total lie, of course. I think that came from, if I'm not mistaken, that may have come from Walla's notes that Rick, she claims, said that. You know, after the hearing on August the 1st, it was a long day. I remember it was 9 o'clock at night, I think, or 8:30. And they wanted, that was me being made a big deal by the prosecution. And the judge wanted to know if that was true because she read it in one of these reports. And I was just like, we went back and talked to Rick, and I'm like, Rick, they're saying that you said this. And he's like, I never said that. I don't remember ever saying that. I said, well, did you, I don't know if I'm allowed. Did you ever want to play? No, I didn't know. Well, that secret hearing, I was in a trial when there was a hearing that was closed, and it should have been. Well, I don't know if legally it could have been or whatever, but that was what that was about. The record will show that. Judge asking, the judge did a great job. She just said, do you want to plead guilty? He said no. And that never ever happened. Yet it was leaked. That was leaked. That is one of the things I found out that about that. I guess it was in Walla's. I think it was in a Walla note, wherever it was from a DOC thing.
I think it was Walla's notes as well, which calls into question all of Walla's notes.
Yes.
DB, I don't know what you're talking about. Andy was so that secret private hearing that was supposed to be followed by a public hearing that was then canceled, and Tony Liggett yelled at everybody, "Get the fuck out!" So maybe everybody. Well, maybe that's why they were all so mad. They thought that was going to be a plea hearing. Is that what you're saying, DB? Right. Hey y'all, I'm gonna play a really quick Mark Lehman clip while I take Boone out to pee, and I'll be right back because I was gonna play this anyway, so I'm gonna do it right now. Don't go away.
Today we have Mark Lehman. Good morning and welcome, Mr. Lehman. You'll be arguing the case. At council table, we also have Kara Winnicky. Good morning, Ms. Winnicky, and Bernice Corley. Good morning and welcome.
Justices, I would like to begin by correcting the record. The judge says that we don't know what Rick Allen's wishes were, and the Attorney General says nothing is clear. On October 11th, 2023, Rick Allen filed the following. Dear Judge Gull, please accept this letter as confirmation that I have communicated with my attorney, Bradley Rosie, regarding the circumstances regarding the leaking of sensitive information in this case. Attorney Rosie has also communicated with me that the prosecutor has requested that the attorney be disqualified from representing me in this case. I do not want this to happen. I want Mr. Baldwin and Mr. Rosie to continue to represent me until this case is resolved one way or the other. Our obligation is the defendant. The defendant wants attorneys Rosie and Baldwin to represent him, and he could not be more clear despite what the other side has tried to represent. To do a half measure is to credit the judge and the attorney general for allowing this to happen. Mr. Rosie and Baldwin were the ones who had an absolute duty to protect their clients' wishes, and they did everything they could to do that. To put them back in the case to say you're working for free or Mr. Allen needs to pay you is to punish Mr. Allen and Mr. Rosie for doing what their ethical rules require them to do, which is to give zealous advocacy for your client. And those gentlemen, when faced with a real tough call, they showed up on October 31st and said, our client, he's been clear what he wants. And this is what we're willing to do in order to protect his rights. But to say that they need to go back in and work for free or that he needs to pay them is to miss what happened here, which is the judge had an absolute duty to act, and that is to accept his letter and his representation of what his expectations were, and that I want these gentlemen to see this case to its end. The Attorney General and the judge want to create ambiguity where none exists. We don't have records like this in other cases. This gentleman could not have been more clear on October 11th, could not have been more clarity on October 19th. There could not have been more clarity on October 31st. And if your court looks at the new filings where he also is waiting for this court to rule because he's confused as to who his lawyers are, we have some clarity here. And to do anything short of putting them right back in where they were when the rights were violated would be a half measure, Justice. With regards to Wheat says, where a court justifiably finds an actual conflict of interest, that's when the discretion kicks in. Conflicts of interest are different than these rules that the judge is citing here. They're different because we know that that's a situation where the lawyer hasn't fully and fairly advised the defendant as to what the repercussions are on proceeding forward. Absent a conflict of interest, we trust these letters like October 11th from these defendants. We trust that they understand what's going on, that they have cooperated with their lawyers and developed a good trial strategy and tactic to catch that prosecutor off on his back foot on a trial that was supposed to happen in January, and to have a well-developed strategy of third-party guilt. These lawyers knew what they were doing. They had articulated in 100-some pages of briefing. Here's what we see in this case. We're ready to go forward with trial. So conflict of interest doesn't apply, and that's what Wheat is clearly about. Would be one of the first court in Indiana for sure, if not the first court in the nation, to say that we treat all kinds of ethical violations like pretrial publicity or the inadvertent violation of a discovery order as something on the same level as Wheat's conflict of interest. That's unheard of, and this court should not be using the original action to create new law like the judge wants us to say here. Justice Masson, Justice Slaughter, you'd asked me a question about ineffective assistance of counsel. I'm clouded sometimes by my judgment because the rules that the judge cited here aren't ineffective, but absolutely a defendant could waive a claim of ineffective assistance of counsel on the record, and that's what our conflict of interest case law establishes. If you pull the gentleman in and you explain to him what your concerns are, what's going on, and make sure that he knowingly and voluntarily wants to proceed forward, yes, you can waive an ineffective assistance of counsel claim. My troubles with answering that question is I feel so passionately, and Mr. Allen and attorneys Rosie and Baldwin feel so passionately that what the judge is talking about here is zealous advocacy, defending the rights of their client, trying to get this thing to trial quickly. And the reasons that the judge is stating in her brief, which are a little different than the reasons on the record, but none of those are what we see as relating to ineffective assistance of counsel, or would even, if proven to be something wrong, aren't going to meet the Strickland prejudice prong. But yes, if these things could ever arise to ineffective assistance of counsel, and justices, I'm not conceding that, but if they could, hypothetically, yes, you can bring the defendant in and he can waive those rights. But that's not what we have here. In the end, Your Honors, The judge exceeded her jurisdiction and refused to accept Rick Allen's wishes when she had an absolute duty to act upon them, and there's an emergency that exists. I think when those things are before this court, there should not be a question as to whether original action exists. And there is more clarity than we see across this state as to what this gentleman's wishes are. They are undisputed. And I think that the judge had an absolute duty to recognize what he wanted, go forward with trial in January. And this case should be heard in Carroll County today rather than before the Indiana Supreme Court. But I appreciate your time and consideration. We ask you to grant the relief we requested. Thank you very much.
That's Mark Lehman. That was portion of his oral argument before the Indiana Supreme Court in January of last year, arguing a couple things, but primarily and most importantly for Rick, arguing that Brad and Andy should not have been removed, that Judge Gull had a duty to protect Rick's Sixth Amendment and his right to counsel, and to not interfere with his right to counsel, which she do be interfering. So anyway, that was Mark Lehman. So Mark Lehman is one of the 2 appellate attorneys that have been appointed to take on Rick's appeal, which is awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So fucking cool. Hold on one second, y'all. Oh yeah, JC. I think most, if not all, oral arguments are at least audio. I think they all are streamed though, right? For the most part. Can we watch a Stacy? Yeah, let's find one. I think I had one more clip I wanted to show from Bob's stream, and then let's do a Stacy. Not to be confused with a Stacy Deanie, a Stacy Deanie Weenie. I was not surprised, but it was notable to me how complimentary Andy, or I guess how fair and gracious and complimentary Andy was towards the prosecuting attorneys on the case. Interesting. A lot more gracious than I probably would be in his position. Okay, I think my last timestamp. So Rick did not want to plead guilty. I froze my shit, y'all. Hold on one second. Okay, this last part I just thought was sweet. I just thought it was cute. So, all right.
You know, I'm passionate about the case. I'm passionate about it, but you know, if I don't talk about it with people, then they might get upset. And if I do talk about it, oh, listen to him, he thinks he's all high and mighty or whatever. And all I could say is I have to be me. You know, I try to be funny about stuff. I try to be self-deprecating about stuff. And, you know, I call myself, grossly negligent, you know, like, you know, pretty good for a grossly negligent lawyer. You know, it might be something I would say to people.
Get that on a t-shirt.
And, you know, I mean, but it is weird that even in the legal community, they have really, and I'm not going to hear probably from the people that, you know, don't agree or are anti-defense or side with the prosecution. I'm probably not going to hear from them. So, but I can tell you overwhelmingly the people I've had, judges that I don't even know have and I don't even remember their names, but I had one guy, I was at Eaton restaurant with my family in downtown Indianapolis, and the guy comes over and says, I know who you are, and I just want to say thank you. You know, and he said very nice things. And, you know, that's the type of support that, you know, and the type of love that I got, you know, and I know that, again, all the people that are watching, I see these little things pop up. I didn't know that was a part of what I'm like, that kind of confused by what all that is. But I appreciate all those sentiments, guys. I really do, because it matters. It matters a lot when you're questioning yourself. You know, it matters a lot when you're questioning yourself as a lawyer, when you're questioning yourself in the manner in which you're conducting yourself. I mean, here I am going off on Holman and Carter, and maybe I'm going to regret that tomorrow. I don't know, but I'm angry about it. You know, I don't like that. If those guys honestly apologized, everything that I've said is related and linked to evidence, emails, you know, things. They're just saying stuff. He's unethical. Okay. File something, be specific. Reporters out there, find out what exactly it is that he's claiming, do some reporting. Okay. You know, I have nothing to hide. I'm very transparent. You know, if I did something wrong, that's fine. I will deal with it, you know, but I don't think that I've done anything wrong.
I'm going to try to streamline the last couple questions I have while you're thinking.
What don't you like, Deebs? Tell us. What don't you like, baby? I got it queued up. I have to pull it up. Oh wait, I just closed YouTube. Wait, no, I didn't. I found it. Thank you for sending that, Bell Mayhem. We're gonna do a watch together, and then Delphi murders the cult of Richard Allen. It's adorable. We are. And what's the point? Okay, this one first. Ah. He was being generous when he said that I had it when we had it pulled up. We have it almost pulled up. About Doug bullying him. I don't like that. Yeah. Oh yeah, Andy said that. I don't like that. Yeah, he's so sweet. He said if they would just apologize. Oh, Andy, he's too nice. I don't like that. Them's fighting words. Them's fighting words. Okay, here we go. Thank you to our baby girl, Bell Mayhem.
You had other cases with this kind of history?
No.
No. I mean, you could probably look throughout the United States and you wouldn't find very many cases with this kind of history.
3 trials, 4 appeals, 4 reversals, and then acquittal. You know, a conviction of the man who really did it. The big twist is when they found Charles Bonet, you know, and I was there for that. And that was pretty traumatic.
You said 4 appeals.
4 appeals. There were the 2 that got the cases reversed. There was one when Keith Henderson decided to write a book. And there was another when Keith Henderson tried to move the trial back into the middle of the publicity. He tried to move it from Warwick County back into Floyd County and tried to join Charles Bonet and David Camm. That means he wanted Charles Bonet and David Camm to sit side by side through an entire trial together. And we had to go to the Indiana Supreme Court and get that reversed too.
So how would you characterize this case compared to like what I guess we'll call a normal criminal case?
The normal criminal case, even the normal complicated, say, death penalty case, has a predictable history where really the prosecutors try to stay within the boundaries of the law. And I think what makes this case unique is that at almost every stage, they were trying to give themselves these huge advantages, both by distorting the evidence, putting in improper evidence, keeping the case in the hothouse of the publicity, writing the book. These are just people who,
That
for
all
some
sounds
reason,
very
just
familiar.
really just didn't want to follow the rules at all.
When you went to the Supreme Court to try to overturn the second conviction, honestly, how much hope did you have that you could get another reversal?
I had hope because it was so unfair. You know, I sat there through that whole trial and heard them say the most horrific things about Dave, and they had absolutely no evidence. They were just making up stuff to make him look like a monster. So I knew how unfair it was, but I also knew the Indiana Supreme Court, and they don't reverse triple murders, and they especially don't reverse them 2 times. So I knew it was going to be a difficult time. But
It struck me as a tremendously long shot.
yeah, but after the oral argument, I left thinking, we got a shot. You know, they're bothered by it. At least 1 or 2 of them are really bothered by this case. You know, there's 11 guys who say Dave's with them. So how does it keep getting messed up?
The case is wild. I don't know enough about it. Yep, that's her source. I'm going to play one more short video. Oops. 3 murder trials is fucking insane, dude. God. What a crazy backwoods state. Like, what are we doing? Juliana.
New phases underway in David Camm's 3rd murder trial with the start of his defense. Camm's attorneys called their first witnesses today. One got emotional on the stand. The trial is in Lebanon, Indiana, at the Boone County Courthouse. WLKY's Marissa Alter is live from there with a wrap of the testimony from today. How'd it go, Marissa?
Well, Rick, a substantial number of David Camm's friends and family were here in the courtroom as his team began to present evidence. Some of them tearing up as one of Camm's biggest supporters took the stand and recounted the events of September 28, 2000. In the lead up to David Camm's 3rd murder trial, he sat down exclusively with WLKY. Camm says he's innocent and says his alibi proves it.
My first inclination is always to speak of the basketball players. 11 honest, hardworking people. Some pillars in the community, some I knew, some I didn't, who have begged to be heard. And the words mean nothing.
The first player took the stand Tuesday morning. Sam Lockhart is not just an alibi witness, but Camm's uncle, too. He told the jury Camm was playing basketball with him at the time Camm's wife, Kim, and kids, Brad and Jill, were shot to death in the garage of the family's Georgetown home. In court, Lockhart said Camm sat out the second game, but was emphatic Camm never left, acted unusual, or had blood on his shirt. Lockhart broke down on the stand as he recounted later that night, driving as fast as he could to his nephew's home after learning something had happened. He described seeing Kim and Brad's bodies on the garage floor and Camm's reaction. He recounted he just screamed this loud, primal, howling scream, and he went down on the asphalt and started kicking.
Now it's our turn to talk, and I'm pretty confident in what we have to say.
The defense also called Robert Stites, a man who testified in the previous 2 Camm trials for the state. But this time around, prosecutors left him out of their case. 13 years ago, Stites worked for forensic consultant Rod Englert, who the prosecutor's office hired for the case. Stites told the court Englert asked him to take photos of and document the crime scene. Uliana pointed out Stites wasn't sent to Southern Indiana to do bloodstain pattern analysis or crime scene reconstruction, things he wasn't qualified to offer an opinion on. In court, Stites agreed. He had no classes in blood spatter at the time, but still deemed drops of Jill's blood on Camm's shirt blowback from a gunshot. That led to Camm's arrest 3 days after his family's murders. Other experts later said the same. It's what Kim's father bases his belief on, that Camm is guilty.
That's the evidence to me. Again, I know they're going to make it a little cloudy, but let them do what they can do.
And testimony continues here tomorrow morning. Now, Uliana said she expects the defense to go about 3 weeks. However, the prosecution went way longer than prosecutors expected because of all the outside motions and hearings that have to go on outside of the jury's presence. Reporting live in Lebanon, I'm Marissa Alter, WLKY News. Thank
Many don't understand our passion for our constitutional rights is rooted in protecting and preserving everyone's rights. A cult believes in fantasy. We believe in reality. Mama True Grit Crime, Gritty, just linked the Wikipedia page for David Camm, wrongful conviction. Good place to start. I think there's a Dateline episode, or maybe 40. There's a million. I mean, obviously we were just watching 48 hours clip, but we should probably do like a talk about that case because I don't know enough about it. I remember hearing about it, I think in like Crime Junkie or whatever, one of those podcasts I used to listen to in the car. And I heard about it for the first time and it gave me tremendous anxiety thinking about like, imagine having 11 people say that you were somewhere at a certain time and like no one fucking believes you. Man, everyone also go subscribe to True Grit Crime if you have not already. Also, they just thought that he acted weird. Man. All right, y'all. So we are going to meet at 4:30 in 45 minutes on Excited Utterance YouTube channel. Oh, wait. Did you want me to show another clip, DB? I'll show this one. I'm going to show this one, and then we're going to go because it's a happy one. We'll leave on a happy note. Whoops.
David Camm, who was convicted of killing his family and then acquitted, gets a multi-million-dollar victory in court.
But the former Indiana State Trooper says money cannot make up for what he lost. In a story you will only see on WDRB, Stefan Johnson talked to Camm one day after that huge settlement. Stefan?
Well, after 3 murder trials, 2 convictions, and 13 years in prison, David Camm filed lawsuits against some of the key players in his prosecution. This latest victory, a $5 million settlement, nearly 10 years after he was acquitted in the 3rd trial. But Camm says this still doesn't make up for losing his family and freedom.
The whole episode in my life really seems like a dream.
It has been nearly 10 years since David Camm was acquitted in a 3rd trial for the murders of his wife and children.
Especially that first not guilty.
But the memory is still vivid.
And then as the judge began reading the verdicts, it was overwhelming.
In 2013, Camm was escorted out of an Indiana courthouse, a free man, but that freedom was not the only thing he was fighting for.
Because civil litigation was definitely on my mind.
After 3 trials, 2 convictions, and 13 years in prison, Camm filed a civil lawsuit against several key players in his prosecution.
You can't wreck someone's life take away their freedom, their liberties, their reputation, their identity, their hometown. You're not supposed to be able to do that in this country.
In September of 2000, Camm's wife and children were murdered in the garage of the family's Georgetown home. And despite the testimonies of 11 witnesses who swore they were playing basketball with the former state trooper at the time of the crime, he was arrested, tried, and convicted in 2 separate trials.
And to have that done to me by people that I knew and that I cared for and worked with, you know, the outrage was there.
Charles Bonet was convicted of the murders and sentenced to life in prison in the second trial, and Camm's conviction was overturned on appeal.
And if he is indeed woefully unqualified to give the opinions that he's giving, that's concealment of material exculpatory facts.
The case eventually went before the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals in Illinois, where the justices questioned the prosecution and so-called expert witness.
I'm here on behalf of Robert Stites, a blood spatter expert retained by the state of Indiana, and we would ask that summary judgment.
You're still calling him that?
It was refreshing to hear their remarks, not just hear the remarks, but the manner in which they made the remarks. And it was very obvious to tell, based upon their interaction with specifically the Attorney General's office, that they saw it for what it was. In fact, being humorous at one point.
One of the justices even referenced Star Trek when addressing how Camm could have been in 2 places at the same time.
Specifically when the Attorney General was talking about leaving basketball, going home, meeting Boney, killing my family, being covered in blood, getting back in my truck, driving back to the basketball games.
So far, Camm has already spent more than $1 million of his settlement money repaying every single family member and friend who helped with his defense. Stefan Johnson, WDRB News.
Crazy, crazy, crazy. Money can't give you back the years you lost, but it certainly can help you rebuild your life. So anyone who says it's not about money, yes, it is. It's a fucking start. Anyone who's acting like financial compensation is not a part of justice is being dishonest. So I will be happy when Rick Allen is acquitted and a free man, and when he's very, first, when he's restored to wellness, physical and psychological and spiritual and emotional and mental wellness, and when he's very fucking rich, because that's what he deserves. Anyway, I just linked, Excited Utterance channel. She will be going live in 40 minutes to do a Brad Rosie pre-game show. So I'm going to do a food, and then I'm going to do a watch, and then we're going to do a Brad Rosie, and then we're probably going to even hang out after Brad's interview. That's my plan. When he finally owns the Richard Allen County Courthouse. That's funny. Ravhawk, my goodness. Money is an exchange of time and resources. It's deserving when your time is stolen. Totally. 100%. The Richard Allen County Courthouse. All right, y'all. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for recapping our Defense Daddy BFF hero Andy Baldwin interview. And I will see y'all over on Excited Utterance. And if I don't see you there, I'll see you at 6 p.m. Eastern on Defense Diaries channel for the Brad Rosie interview. My God, I'm so excited. Okay. Love you. Bye.